Thick, dark clouds hung low over the empty football cage, like the sky itself was pressing down on the school. The air felt heavy, quiet, waiting. Inside the steel mesh, boys in blue kits ran through mud and noise, chasing the ball, slipping, shouting, fighting to win like it was the most important thing in the world. Outside the fence, Frank sat on a low brick wall in his school blazer, watching. He wasn't part of the game. He never was anymore. He leaned back slightly, calm, almost amused, like someone watching a film he had already seen before. The game was fast and messy, feet slamming against asphalt, mud splashing, bodies colliding against the fence. Then suddenly the ball broke free from the chaos and shot out of the cage toward the sidelines, spinning hard and fast, straight toward Frank. For a split second he just stared at it, surprised, like he had forgotten something important. Then instinct took over. He pushed himself off the wall and stepped forward as the ball reached him. He trapped it under his black school shoe, the ball stopping dead like it had hit concrete. The boys inside the cage stopped and looked through the mesh at him. Frank looked up, focused somewhere far ahead. Then he swung his leg. The ball didn't fly like a normal kick. It launched. It shot straight upward, clearing the fence, clearing the school buildings, disappearing into the heavy clouds like a rocket. Every boy on the pitch stood frozen, heads tilted toward the sky, watching the empty space where the ball had vanished. Frank slowly sat back down on the brick wall. For a moment he looked serious, almost worried. Then someone inside the cage shouted, laughing, "I can't, freak, you did it again." Frank couldn't help it. He laughed too, loud and genuine, like a kid who knew he had just messed up, but couldn't undo it. But someone else had seen everything. The new teacher watched Frank from the edge of the yard, his eyes narrowed, his mind already racing. Over the next few days, he followed Frank through hallways and staircases, always watching, always thinking. One afternoon, he cornered Frank in a corridor and leaned in close. "I saw what you did," he whispered. "That wasn't normal." Before Frank could answer, a man in a dark suit appeared behind the teacher and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. The teacher froze. The man said nothing, but the message was clear. The teacher slowly stepped away and walked down the corridor without another word. Frank stood there alone, his face empty, like he was used to this. Later that week, on a quiet residential street, an elderly woman called out from her front gate. Her ginger cat was stuck high in a tree again. Frank sighed, dropped his school bag on the pavement, and looked up at the branches. Without a running start, without any effort, he jumped. He shot straight up, grabbed the cat midair, and landed back on the pavement like nothing had happened. He handed the cat to the woman. She took it, gave him a strange, cold look, and quietly closed her gate. Frank picked up his bag and walked down the empty street alone.
Far away from the grit of the schoolyard, in a sterile government office buried beneath layers of concrete and bureaucracy, a CIA analyst sat drowning in the blue light of her monitors. The air in the room was stale, smelling of burnt coffee and ozone. Her desk was a graveyard of termination warnings and last chance notices, the red ink bleeding into the white paper like a slow-motion disaster. Her career was a fraying rope, and she was at the very end of it. She didn't just need a lead. She needed a miracle, something impossible that the heavy-handed suits in Langley had overlooked. Late one night, as a janitor's cart rattled in the hallway, she delved into the digital basement of the internet. There, amidst the static of forgotten forums and obscure conspiracy threads, she found it, a blog titled "The Boy Who Kicked the Clouds." The posts were the frantic, jagged ramblings of a man named Greaves, a former teacher whose obsession had clearly cost him his sanity. He documented glitches in reality, impossible feats of strength, vertical leaps that defied the laws of physics, and a kinetic speed that blurred the lens of every cheap camera he used. One name anchored every post. One name was written with the terrified reverence of a man who had seen a god in a school blazer. Frank. The analyst leaned back, the shadows of the office swallowing her. She wasn't looking at a ghost story anymore. She was looking at her ticket back into the light. The secret had been buried for years on a dark, wooded stretch of road where the trees grew too close to the asphalt. On that night, a blinding blue light had torn through the canopy, a streak of celestial violence that sent a family car flipping into the mud. Inside the twisted wreckage, 7-year-old Frank lay broken, his small chest heaving in the damp air. But as the first responders arrived, the miracle began, or the curse. In the sterile white light of the emergency room, doctors stood in paralyzed silence as Frank's wounds didn't just heal. They vanished. Torn flesh knitted itself back together with a wet, rhythmic snap. Deep lacerations sealed until the skin was as smooth as marble. When the boy finally opened his eyes, the nurses gasped and stepped back. They weren't the eyes of a child anymore. They were silver, cold, and metallic, as if something ancient and electric had moved in behind them and taken up residence. At home, the real Frank sat in the dim light of his living room, the television casting flickering shadows against the wall. A news alert broke the silence. Missing student. When the photo of the kidnapped boy appeared, Frank's expression didn't change, but the air in the room grew heavy. He recognized that boy. He recognized the kid. Slowly, his right hand began to pulse. A faint, white-hot glow started at his fingertips and crept up to his knuckles, the heat vibrating with a low, subaudible hum. He stood up and opened a drawer. He pulled out a black balaclava and a pair of heavy leather gloves. He dressed with a terrifying, measured deliberation. There was no fear in his movements, only a cold, mechanical precision. He looked at himself in the hallway mirror. The quiet student, the freak who sat on the wall, was gone. In his place stood a silhouette of kinetic vengeance. Night fell like a lead weight, leaving the streets hollowed out and silent. Then, the hunt began. Frank didn't run like a man. He moved like a shadow tearing through the fabric of the city. His feet hit the asphalt with the force of hammers, but his stride was silent, a blur of motion that outpaced the wind. Ahead, the black van was weaving through the highway traffic, its engine roaring in a desperate attempt to reach the safe house. Frank kept pace, running alongside the vehicle at 60 miles per hour, his eyes fixed on the driver's side mirror. He pushed off the ground, a massive, impossible leap that sent him soaring through the air to land on the roof with a thud that buckled the reinforced steel. Sparks sprayed into the night as his leather gloves scraped for purchase. The van swerved violently, the driver screaming as the roof groaned under the weight of something that shouldn't exist. Tires squealed, smoke pouring from the wheel wells as the vehicle rocked on two wheels. Frank shifted his weight, centered his gravity, and punched. His fist tore through the metal roof like it was wet paper. Inside, the masked men scrambled for their weapons, their faces contorted in a sudden, primal terror. Frank was faster than their reflexes, faster than the fear could even settle in their guts. The van spun out of control, colliding with a lamppost in a shower of glass and sparks. As the vehicle began to flip, rolling across the asphalt in a storm of mangled steel, Frank leapt into the wreckage. He snatched the kidnapped boy from the rolling darkness, shielding him with his own indestructible body as they tumbled across the road. He landed hard, the friction of the road tearing at his clothes, but he rose immediately. He stood in the center of the highway, the rescue boy shivering at his feet. Behind him, the black van lay in a mangled, shredded heap, a smoking testament to a power that could not be contained. Far away, the analyst watched the monitors flicker and die. The screens faded to a hollow, buzzing static. Her plan hadn't just failed. It had been dismantled by something she couldn't comprehend. The next morning, the schoolyard was bathed in the gray light of a heavy dawn. The cloud sat low over the football cage, thick and unmoving. Frank and the rescue boy sat together on the brick wall, shoulder to shoulder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They simply looked toward the center of the cage. Inside, behind the locked diamond link gates, sat the scorched, shredded husk of the agency van. It was a trophy. It was a tombstone for the secret they tried to keep. The freak was no longer hiding, and the world was finally beginning to understand why.